When was the last time you walked into your home with a feeling of genuine joy? I don't just mean the relief of arriving, but something much deeper. That feeling of, I am fine here, I am safe here, everything is in its place here. Can you remember it? Because there are people who have spent months, even years, walking into their homes and feeling exactly the opposite. They open the door and something changes in that instant. A weight they didn't bring with them is added to the one they were already carrying. An energy they can't name, but which they recognize and let pass, thinking it's exhaustion, age, or just life. But it's not exhaustion. And money comes in, but it doesn't stay. Every month, something unexpected takes it away. A bill, a breakdown, something unplanned, as if there were an invisible crack through which everything escapes. And even if you work harder, the same thing keeps happening. That feeling at the door and that crack in abundance have the same origin. Jesus knew this. He knew that the entrance to your home is sacred, that the threshold, that exact point where the outside world intersects with the inside, is not just a door, it is the filter for everything that enters your life. Prosperity, energy, peace, everything passes through there first. And when that threshold is unprotected, you don't get to choose what comes in. The weight comes in, the exhaustion comes in, whatever drains your abundance comes in without you noticing, without you being able to name it. In this video, you will understand what the Archons are and how they operate exactly through that threshold. You will learn what Jesus taught that night about how to protect it, a teaching that the church recorded and kept for 2,000 years without transmitting it. And you will learn which plant Jesus indicated, why that plant and not another, and how to hang it tonight. But there is something I need to tell you before it begins. The plant alone does not activate anything. Jesus was very clear that night. A plant hung without understanding is decoration. What turns it into protection is not in the plant, it is in the preparation, in the order, in the exact intention that is spoken before hanging it. Without that, tonight you will put a little branch on your door and nothing will change. This video is only worthwhile if you make it to the end, because the complete instruction, the one Jesus gave that night and which was not written down, only passed from hand to hand. That instruction is at the end, and it starts here. Jesus had called his disciples that night. It was late. The disciples were sitting, listening to him. It was an exhausting night after a long journey, gathered on the edge of the city, inside a small house. One was sitting by the fire, another leaning against the wall. The air was warm, but inside there was a strange coolness. Jesus was standing. He didn't speak immediately. He just looked at the door of the room. He looked at it for a long time. The disciples looked too. It was an ordinary wooden door, a simple latch, an old rag on the threshold. Then he turned and asked, "What is the weakest point of a house?" One of the disciples said, "The roof." Another said, "The wall." Jesus shook his head. "No, the door." He paused and added, "But the door I am talking about now is not this one." The disciples waited. "The door I am talking about is not what opens and closes thousands of times a day. The door I am talking about is the face of the house, open to the soul, the threshold, the point where the outside world intersects with the inside world." Someone asked, "Why is that point important?" Before answering, Jesus walked over to the window, looked outside at the trees in the darkness, the empty street, the moonless sky. "Why?" he said. "Everything passes through the door. What is seen passes, what is unseen also passes." At that moment there was silence, and in that silence Jesus pronounced a name, the Archons. If you have heard this word before, perhaps in Gnostic teachings or elsewhere, know this. Jesus did not pronounce this word as a theory, he pronounced it as a reality. The Archons are entities that govern the material world. They are disconnected from the true divine source, but they are powerful and they get that power from only one place. From people, but not just any people. Imagine a predator in the field about to attack the herd. Which one does it choose? Not the strongest, but the one it can catch most easily. But the Archons work differently. They don't look for the weakest, they look for the brightest. If there is a lit candle in the dark, you want to put out the one that shines the brightest. An unlit candle is not a threat, but the one that burns can awaken those around it. That is the one you want to extinguish. Jesus explained this that night, and he also said this: for the Archons to enter, they always pass through the door, without exception. And that door, the invisible door, the energy door, the space above the threshold, when unprotected, remains open. Through a protected door they cannot pass. One of the disciples asked, "How do we know if our door's open?" Jesus smiled, but this time it was a different smile, a sad smile. "You already know," he said. "You just couldn't put a name to that feeling." He stared at the disciples one by one. Each face carried something, a weight that was not from that day, an exhaustion that did not come from the miles walked. He saw it, and they felt that he saw it. Where is your hand right now? Bring it for a moment to your left side, right over your heart. Put it there. Feel that heartbeat. That heart lives in a house with a door. That door is going to be protected tonight. Jesus continued that night, but first he made a list. What should not be in front of a door? First, if there is something broken in front of the door, a broken pot, a lamp that doesn't work, something that has been waiting years to be repaired, that object is telling the house this: there are unfinished things here. Abundance does not enter incomplete places. One of the disciples thought at that moment of a broken pot that had been in front of his door for years. He had left it thinking, "One day I'll fix it," but he hadn't done it. Did Jesus see it, or was it a coincidence? No one knows, but right at that moment he said, "Why do we keep something broken there?" And he answered himself, "Because we don't want to see." That broken object is not just an object, it is the reflection of something unfinished. And unfinished things are exactly the chains that hold us back. Right now, without moving from where you are, close your eyes for a moment. You can see the door of your house, the threshold. What is in front of it? The second thing, stagnant water. Water that is in front of the door without moving, without being renewed. Flowing water transports, stagnant water accumulates. But what each one accumulates is very different. Living water carries with it what you give it. Dead water carries what no one wanted. Think about that. There is a bucket, a basin, or a container that has been on that threshold for a long time without anyone moving it. Sometimes you don't even see it because it has become part of the landscape, but the threshold remembers it. The third, objects that belong to someone else but have not been returned. Something a neighbor left behind, that a relative forgot, that should have been returned months ago but is still there. That object ties up the threshold. Abundance does not pass through a tied threshold, and not because it is a curse, but because that knot tells the world, there is something unresolved here, and the unresolved blocks the way for the new. There is something curious about these objects. They don't weigh anything. They are there in a corner without bothering anyone, and that's why they are still there. But the threshold feels what the eye no longer sees. The fourth, the doormat that hasn't been changed in a long time. The doormat exists to leave outside what comes from outside. But if it is dirty itself, if it is worn out, if it has been there so long that no one sees it anymore, it is no longer a filter. It is an accumulation point. It no longer protects, it retains. The fifth, sharp corners pointing toward the door. Plants with thorns, objects with sharp points, acute angles facing the door frame. This signal has no direction. When it tries to stop the unwanted, it also stops the wanted. What it repels does not choose, it repels everything. Jesus finished speaking and waited. Then he asked, "How many of you have any of these things in front of your door?" Silence. Then one by one, hands went up. Raising a hand there had a meaning. It wasn't just saying, "Yes, I have that too." It was seeing. And at the center of Jesus' teaching was exactly this. Without seeing, you cannot change. Without seeing, you cannot correct. Without seeing, you keep living, saying, "This is my destiny." But after seeing comes responsibility. Now, Jesus said, "Perhaps you wonder why I am telling you all this. A pot, a doormat, just this." He paused. "No, it is not just this." That night, one of the disciples asked, "Jesus, how do we protect the door?" And before answering, Jesus said a single word, "Plant." The disciples waited. Jesus continued, "In this world, there are things created by Sophia, things formed by the hands of divine wisdom, without any human hand having touched them, without any system having produced them, coming from the earth, nourished by the sun, ripened in time. A disciple asked, "What things?" "Stone, earth, plants." Jesus paused. The Archons cannot understand the frequency of what Sophia has created. They do not know that language. And when an object that speaks that language is over a threshold, they cannot approach that door. There was a different silence this time, the silence of someone who is beginning to understand something they always knew but never had the words to name. "What plant?" someone asked. Jesus did not answer immediately. He smiled. "I will tell you that in a moment, but first you need to understand why it works. Because the difference between a gesture made with understanding and a gesture made blindly, that difference is everything." One of the disciples leaned forward. "Why is it everything?" Jesus answered without hesitation. "Because the gesture without understanding is decoration, and the gesture with understanding is a declaration. There is a huge difference between hanging something on a door because you were told to, and hanging it because you know what you are doing. The second way activates something in you that the first can never activate. And that something, that awareness, is what the Archons cannot cross." Stop here for a moment. Perhaps right now there is a voice inside you saying, "A plant? As simple as that?" That voice is not yours. That voice is the voice of the system that for years told you the sacred is complex. It is the echo of the voice that said, protection only comes from the institution, from the priest, or from special rituals. Because if you, with your own hands in your own home, without needing any intermediary, could establish this protection, you wouldn't need that system. And the system knew it. Jesus knew that the most powerful things are the simplest. Sophia never thought in a complex way. She put a seed in the earth, gave it water, the sun reached it, and it became a tree. The Archons could never understand that. That is why it works. Think about it. In all the cultures of the Mediterranean, in all the geographies where Jesus lived, in Mesopotamia, in Anatolia, on the shores of the sea he traveled, the same knowledge exists. Certain plants at the entrance of the house. It is no coincidence or superstition. It is a memory that survived all attempts to erase it, because what works does not disappear. It only hides until someone names it again. That night Jesus waited. The disciples were ready and he explained. The plant to be hung had to have three characteristics. The first, to have come from the earth, not produced by human hands or passed through any factory, created directly by Sophia. The second, to be able to maintain its vitality. A cut and dried plant still carries that frequency, but how much it carries is what matters. A dried plant that still smells is still alive in what matters. A plant without aroma or texture no longer speaks the language of Sophia. The third, to have an aroma. This was the least talked about part that night. Jesus explained it like this. The Archons exist without a body. They do not breathe, they do not smell. An aroma is Sophia's most powerful language. The perfume of a flower, the scent of a leaf, the vapor of a plant, these close that door to those entities. It is an invisible wall, a wall that passes through the nostrils. A disciple asked, "What plant shall we hang?" Jesus pronounced three names. The first, rosemary. Rosemary has been known for centuries, Jesus said, in every corner of the Mediterranean, in deserts, mountains, and coasts. This plant symbolizes purification, but it is not a symbol. It is a function. The aroma of rosemary tells that door, this house knows. A conscious house is not an open door. He paused. Perhaps you saw it in your grandmother's house. A little sprig hung near the door. Perhaps you let it pass, thinking it was an old custom. It was not a custom. It was a teaching that survived 2,000 years in the hands of women when the books were burned. The second, laurel. Laurel means victory. You may have heard this, but this is not symbolic. The frequency of laurel is a frequency of protection. You don't have to fight to win. Sometimes it is enough to have the right object in front of the door. The sign of victory does not invite defeat. The third, mint. Mint gets things moving. It breaks stagnation. Think about the mint you have. Grandmothers knew it. On the threshold in the kitchen, next to the bed. It was no coincidence. Do you understand now why it was there? The disciples listened in silence, and then Jesus said something else. But even if you take these three plants, even if you shake them and hang them, if there is no intention, it will fall short. Intention. That word settled in the minds of the disciples in a new way that night. Jesus continued, "The church taught you this. Pray, wait. If the answer comes, give thanks. If it doesn't come, work harder." But in that teaching, you are passive. The answer comes from someone else. The decision is in someone else's hands. I tell you this, you are active. That door is your door. That threshold is your threshold. When you hang that plant with your own hands, you are not just hanging a plant. You are saying, "This house is mine. I decide what passes through this threshold." He paused. That conscious decision is as powerful as the plant, perhaps more so. One of the disciples did not speak. He just lowered his head, and in that silence, something changed in him. It wasn't an idea that entered, it was a memory. The memory of having always known this. Like when someone gives you the name of something you had been feeling for years without being able to name it. And the instant you hear that name, your chest opens up. Not because you have learned something new, but because something that already lived inside you has just found its place. Is there something like that in you right now? Something that, upon hearing these words, doesn't sound new to you, but familiar. That recognition is exactly what Jesus was talking about. Not teaching, but memory. A disciple asked, "And if the Archons cannot enter through the door, what do we feel? What do we notice?" Jesus looked up. "It is difficult to feel what is not there," he said, "but you will notice this. When you enter the house, that weight is no longer there, or if it is, this time it stays outside. When you pass through the door, something happens, a small but real difference. Put your hand on your chest for a moment right now, on the left, where your heart beats. Just a second. The heartbeat you feel now also beat this morning, last night, and while you slept. And that heartbeat has always lived in that house, behind that door. The house where that heart lives is going to be different tonight. Now I am going to give you the practical part. 3 steps for tonight. You don't need to go to any store. In all likelihood, your house is already ready. First step, go to your door. Truly look with the eyes of an observer. Is there anything broken? Any object that hasn't been changed in years? Something that shouldn't be there but still is? Tonight, remove it. Just look and remove it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just conscious. Second step, find at least one of the 3 plants, rosemary, laurel, or mint. Fresh or dried, both work. The aroma of the dried plant is still active. If you already have a bay leaf on your kitchen shelf, that is enough. If you have a small sprig of rosemary, it is enough. Tie them together with a string or a simple piece of cloth and hang them on the upper frame of the door. A small bundle. It doesn't even need to be visible. As long as you know it's there, it's enough. Third step, before hanging it or right after, say 3 phrases inside yourself, out loud or in silence. This threshold is protected. Through this door only pass the things that make my life grow. Through this door enters abundance. 3 phrases, just that. 10 minutes tonight with what you already have in your kitchen, without complicated rituals, without anyone's permission. The same hand that cooks, that hugs, and that works, that same hand can do this. It already has everything it needs. Now I need to tell you something. After doing this, you will hear a voice. That was nonsense. Nothing is going to change. Or a more subtle version. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. That voice is not yours. It is the voice of the system that for years told you that protection only comes from the institution. Because if you can use this knowledge with your own hands in your own home, without paying anything, then you don't need that system. And that system knows it. That voice arrives right when you are in front of the door with the rosemary in your hand. Why does it wait there? Because that moment matters. Only what works meets resistance. What is useless meets no resistance because no one tries to stop it. When that voice comes, don't argue with it, just observe it and do it anyway. Because that voice is the confirmation that you are in the right place. Tonight, approach your door, stop, Look and remember that weight you felt when entering. That weight has an origin, and tonight that origin is going to stay one step behind the door. The first day you will notice a small difference, a feeling as you pass through. The first week, when you return home, that weight will arrive less or won't arrive at all. You will wonder why you feel so calm. There is nothing visible to explain that calm, but it is there. The first month, the things that were halfway done begin to be completed. The news you were waiting for arrives. Money comes in, but this time it stays a little longer. Whoever looks from the outside cannot see this, but from the inside you feel that something has started to move, like when a closed room finally opens and the air circulates. This is not magic, it is the result of what Jesus taught. Through a protected door, what used to leave no longer escapes. But there is something else. This knowledge of the door is powerful. Rosemary, laurel, mint, and intention. This works. But Jesus also spoke of something else that night. That even if the door is protected, when you are with certain people, something leaves. You feel a strange emptiness when you separate from them. Jesus described those people with 5 signs. Recognizing someone with one of those signs already changes something. But to hear that, the ground has to be ready, and that ground starts tonight in front of your door. First, protect the door. When the ground is ready, everything finds its place on its own. Tonight, start with your door. When you pass in front of it, stop for a moment and feel. You will already feel the answer inside. If something changed tonight, you can leave it in the comments or keep it in your heart. And if there is someone in your life who needs this, send the video in silence, just the link. Sometimes the greatest gift is showing a door. If this story has transformed the way you see the simplest elements of your home, we invite you to subscribe and like our channel. We are rescuing the wisdom that time tried to hide. Protect your present and sow your future. The next treasure of knowledge will be revealed very soon. Join us.